Hello, my name is Troy Lindquist. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist with the National Weather Service in Boise, Idaho. I've been here about 9 years in my current position. And prior to that, I was at the Pocatello National Weather Service office for about 2.5 years, so I do have some familiarity with hydrology and weather patterns over the eastern part of the state as well. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to do a short review of the 2020 water year, then we'll get into the current water year and see where we stand as of early December. And I'll talk about La Nina and finally the winter and spring outlook. So from September 2019 through September 2020, last water year, some things that stand out on the percent of normal precipitation map is very dry conditions across the Magic Valley, the parts of the Upper Snake Plain, and kind of creeping up into parts of the Central Mountains. You can see 50 to 70% of normal precipitation, so quite dry in that area. Otherwise, most of the state was a little below normal or near normal. Boise area, Treasure Valley, above normal precipitation for last water year. I think primarily because of the really wet June that we had. So small area there that ended up with above normal precipitation. Temperatures for last water year, most of the state was near normal to above normal, those whites and blues. Another area that kind of stands out, in the Upper Snake Plain region, that area of below normal. Not quite sure why that is. It'd be interesting to dig into the data and see why that is the case there. Early April snowpack last spring, the basin averages on the left. You can see most of the state was average to above average, except when you get down into the Boise Basin and work your way east across the Big and Littlewood and Big Lost Basins. Those areas generally 75 to 90% of normal. The map on the right shows the snow water equivalent early April last year. You can see based on the scale the pinks into the kind of deep purples. There's several inches to in feet even of snow water equivalent contained in the snowpack in early April. So a lot of water up there to get us through the warm and dry season. And some areas to note. The map on the left showing these areas that were lagging in early April. Highlight them here on the right. That's kind of the Big and Littlewood and Big Lost Basins. You can see how the snow water equivalent there looks a little thin compared to some of the other mountain regions. They just missed out on the good storms last winter compared to some of the surrounding mountains. Well, towards the end of the 2020 water year, September is when we typically, we transition from summer into the fall, and we start to see some good storms move into the region. That really didn't happen this past September. Up in northern Idaho, they got some areas of normal to a little above normal precipitation, but by and large, the state was quite dry in September. And especially southwest part of the state, you can see some of those deeper reds, 25% or less of normal precipitation. And the average temperature map on the right for September, you can see most of the state was several degrees above normal. Those dry conditions continued into the new water year for the southern half of the state. You can see, especially across south central, southeast Idaho, you can see, again, the less than 50% of normal for October. You work your way north, north central, northern Idaho, Panhandle region, they got some good precipitation up there. Average temperatures for October on the right. Much of the southern half of the state was, again, several degrees above normal and near normal for most of the northern part of the state and parts of eastern Idaho. Moving into November, we finally got a shift in the weather patterns where we got some good precipitation across the southern part of Idaho. Percent of normal on the left there, you can see Treasure Valley through the Magic Valley into the Upper Snake Plain, average to above precipitation in those regions. And we even picked up some good early season snow. I'll show you in a second. Map on the right, average temperatures for November, again quite warm across most of the state. A lot of the red colors there, with temperatures being 2 to 3 or so degrees above average. And this Bogus Basin snowtail site just north of Boise, when we were getting those good storms in the kind of early to middle part of November, this graph is showing the snow accumulation through the water year. This black line is the current water year, and this smoother green line is just the average or median as you move through the water year. You can see those early to mid-November storms really boosted the snowpack there to where it was well above average. Then we got back into a drier weather pattern by Thanksgiving, and things really flattened out. And this gray region is the daily maximum snow water equivalent at this location. And you can see we even went above the records, daily records, for a while there before it flattened out and trended back towards normal. Well, from around Thanksgiving through the early part of December, it's been, again, a very dry weather pattern. And the reason for that is we've had a ridge of high pressure that's generally looks something like the map I have on the right here. And you can see this is showing that ridge over the Great Basin extending across the northern Rockies. And that's just kept dry and stagnant weather across Idaho, and it's pushed the storm track to the north. So we just haven't been able to get some storms that bring a precipitation to the region. The precipitation percent of normal for that period on the left here shows a very vast area of very little precipitation during that November 26th through December 9th period, as that ridge just dominated. That extends from the northern part of the Mississippi River across the northern plains, the northwest, and through the Four Corners in the southwest U.S. So a very large chunk of the country has been quite dry as of recent. So for the current water year, just in summary, from October 1 through December 9, % of normal precipitation. Good chunk of the state is lagging a bit, but we do have some areas, southwest Idaho, Treasure Valley, parts of eastern Idaho, and the Panhandle that are sitting about normal or a little bit above normal for precipitation. Good news is that it's still very early in the water year, and we have lots of time to make up for deficits that we're seeing right now. And December 10th snowpack, you can see most of the state in the yellows and browns is lagging with the early season snowpack. Some areas by quite a bit. Boise Basin sitting pretty close to normal at 99%, and one of the basins near the Utah border also sitting near normal or a little bit above. So looking at some point locations of how our precipitation is accumulated through the calendar year, starting off in January at the Idaho Falls Airport, mid-January through mid-March, very dry, very little precipitation. Then we got into an active weather pattern, picked up some good precipitation, jumped us up to near normal, which is this smooth part of the light green line here. And we kind of maintained normal to a little above normal through the spring. Some good storms in June jumped us up quite a bit above normal, and then we kind of flatlined through the warm, drier summer and started to get a little more precip as it moved into the fall. But right now, early December, sitting at 2.43 inches, which is a little bit above normal for the calendar year. Further west, Twin Falls and the Magic Valley. I already talked about the dryness that area experienced through the last water year, and that is definitely reflected here. You can see last spring it was pretty close to normal, but boy, they sure missed out on the good, precipitation in the spring and a very dry summer. And as of early December, they're sitting at only 6.74 inches, and normally they're about 10 inches at this time for the calendar year. So definitely dry there. And finally, moving over to the western part of the state, Boise Airport, the precipitation graph here in the middle. And since January, kind of tracking normal to above normal through the winter into the spring. And then I mentioned before we had a really wet June in the Treasure Valley. You see several good storms boosted us several inches above normal. Warm, dry summer months reflected here. And as of early December, we're sitting at just under 14 inches of precipitation, which is quite a bit above normal for the calendar year at this point. So the latest U.S. drought monitor, if you look at Idaho, we're in much better shape than some of the surrounding areas. Oregon has much worse drought as a whole. Then you work your way south of Idaho towards Utah, Four Corners region, exceptional drought down in those areas. But we do have that one area, and kind of centered over Blaine County, up into Custer County, of severe to extreme drought. Again, that goes all the way back to some of the lagging snowpack numbers that we saw last winter and early spring. So anyway, that's areas of the worst drought across the state. But you look down towards the Utah border in the southeast Idaho, there's also some dryness down there as well. Let's look at our reservoirs and see where we stand as of December 9th. For the Upper Snake Bureau of Reclamation reservoirs, sitting at 58% of capacity. Carry over the graph on the lower right, you can see the dotted red line is average, the blue line is the current water year, and the dashed green line is the previous year. So we had above average carryover, and we're tracking above average as we move into the early part of December. Further west in the Boise River reservoir system, we're sitting at 48 or 45% of capacity with near average carryover. The Payette system at 57% of capacity, and they had near average carryover as well. And finally, just across the state line in eastern Oregon, the Oahe Reservoir, above average, a little bit above average carryover. But if you look at that green line from last year, we're well below the carryover that we saw on the Oahe system last year. So now we'll talk about El Nino Southern Oscillation and the current La Nina that is in place. Just a quick review, El Nino is the warm phase of ENSO, and that's where we have warmer than normal sea surface temperatures in the central and eastern tropical Pacific. And La Nina is the cool phase. So we have cooler than normal sea surface temperatures in that region. And the reason we study this, and it's important, is these sea surface temperature anomalies impact the weather in the tropical region of the Pacific. And that impacts the weather patterns over the North Pacific, the jet streams and the storm track over the North Pacific and North America, which obviously impacts our weather patterns and what type of precipitation we get over North America. This map shows the current sea surface temperature anomalies over the oceans, and you can see along the tropical region, the equator there, that big thick black line. La Nina conditions that stick out like a sore thumb. So you can see those blues showing below normal sea surface temperatures in that region. And this red rectangle, that's indicating that Nino 3.4 region, and that's the region that the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center uses to study the ENSO phase, put it into a historical perspective, and determine whether it's a weak or moderate or strong La Nina or El Nino. So that's the region they really key in on. If we look at our models that indicate what they believe is going to happen with ENSO or our current La Nina, if you look across the bottom, that's our time from the fall of 2020 through the winter and the spring. See, we're currently squarely in a moderate La Nina, and most of the models keep it in a moderate La Nina as we move through the late fall into the winter. And then by the time we move into the springtime, they trend it back up towards INSO neutral. So it's pretty certain that we're going to continue to have La Nina conditions through the upcoming winter. So what kind of impacts do we generally see across North America when we do have La Ninas? Well, the wintertime weather patterns, what we typically see is a jet stream that kind of swoops down from the Gulf of Alaska across British Columbia and then kind of swings down across the Ohio Valley. And this typically brings wetter than normal conditions across the Pacific Northwest and even into parts of Idaho, and a broad swath of below normal or cooler than normal temperatures across the Northwest and Northern Plains. This La Nina patterns definitely don't favor some of these areas over the Southwest Four Corners that are really suffering from exceptional drought, as we can see on this map what they typically produce during the wintertime with these La Nina conditions. So this map shows the average snowfall patterns for strong La Nina years. And like I said, we're squarely in a moderate strength La Nina. But if we happen to get a little bit, stronger La Nina, maybe that would end up with something similar to this. But anyway, this is showing the difference from average seasonal snowfall in inches for basically our snow accumulation season from October through April. And this is for events from between 1950 and 2008. So you can see, looking at these colors across the Panhandle, through the Central Mountains and the Snake River headwaters along the Wyoming border, we typically see 1 to 3 feet or so of above normal in snowfall during that period. So these graphs here show our historical runoff for water years during La Nina years, El Nino years, and neutral years. And you can see that along the bottom here, La Nina, neutral, El Nino along the x-axis. And then in the vertical here on the y-axis, that's the runoff volumes. This green line is the average runoff that we see, and this is for the Snake River near Heisey for the April through September period. And each of these dots with the number by, that's the water year. So what we're seeing here with this blue trend line is during La Nina conditions, we typically see above normal runoff volumes for the April through September period. So if we want looking for a good water year and a good runoff volumes, La Nina definitely favors that for this location. We can shift over to the west side of the state to Lucky Peak Dam. We see a similar type of thing. Again, that trend line shows during La Nina conditions, we typically see above normal, above average runoff volumes for that April through September period. And finally, up north, the Kootenai at Bonners Ferry, same type of deal. La Ninas typically produce above normal runoff volumes during that period. The only part of the state where we probably don't see the La Nina favoring above normal runoff volumes most of the time would be near the Nevada and Utah border. That trend line would be much flatter and really not La Ninas or El Ninas probably wouldn't lend themselves to either above or below normal runoff volumes in those areas. So moving on to the winter outlook, this map here, I've got Idaho Falls marked there with the green location identifier. And the way to look at these maps is they're probability maps. So the area here that's not colored, that's we call that the equal chances area. Equal chances of having either above normal, below normal, or normal temperatures during the December through February period. The blue colored area across northern Idaho, those are areas where the probabilities would favor below normal temperatures, and the browns across the far south would favor above normal temperatures during that 3-month period. And same thing for precipitation for December through February. Idaho Falls is right on the edge, so no real shift in the probabilities either way. But move into northern Idaho, definitely the odds favor above normal precipitation and that equal chances of any of those three categories across the far southern part of the state. So January, February, March outlook, same type of deal. Northern part of the state favoring below normal temperatures, above normal precipitation, and not much of a shift in the odds when you work your way across the central southern part of the state, especially for precipitation. February, March, April, so late winter into spring. Again, La Nina impacts still expected to be seen across the region, so above normal temperatures favored, or below normal across the north, and above normal near the Nevada-Utah border, and better chances of above normal precipitation the further north you go in the state. And then the springtime, March, April, May, same type of deal as well. This map is from our Northwest River Forecast Center. This is their water supply forecast webpage. I've got the URLs along the bottom. The River Forecast Center in Portland, they forecast for the Columbia Basin. So that includes most of Idaho. If you want to see the water supply forecast for the far southeast part of the state, Bear River Basin, you'll have to go to the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, and I've got that URL in the lower right. But this map shows the percent of normal runoff volume for the April through September period. And these forecasts are updated daily, and they include 10 days of forecast temperature and precipitation in the volume forecast. So if you clicked on any of these points, you would be able to drill down and get more detailed information. And finally, the U.S. seasonal drought outlook, valid through the end of February, and with La Nina, moderate La Nina squarely in place, and we already talked about the impacts that we see across the Northwest and Idaho. They are suggesting some improvement in drought conditions across these areas in Idaho that we pointed out earlier. So the parts of the Magic Valley up into the Central Mountains, anticipating some improvement with better chances of above normal precipitation as we go through the winter with La Nina in place. And finally, my contact information, weather.gov, that's the National Weather Service website. If you clicked anywhere on that map, you could get to the local weather forecast office. There's my email, and that's the best way to reach me at this point, as I'm working from home most of the time. That is my office phone on the right. Thank you for listening.